What is the brain? The brain is a sophisticated organ that manages every bodily function as well as thought, memory, emotion, touch, motor skills, vision, respiration, temperature, and hunger. The central nervous system, or CNS, is made up of the spinal cord that emerges from the brain. How is the brain constructed? The brain is around 60% fat and weighs about 3 pounds in a typical adult. Combinations of water, protein, carbs, and salts make up the remaining 40%. The brain is not a muscle in and of itself. It is made up of nerves, blood vessels, neurons, and glial cells. What is the gray matter and white matter? There are two distinct parts of the central nervous system, gray matter and white matter. Gray matter in the brain refers to the thicker, outer layer, and white matter to the thinner, inner layer beneath. This arrangement is reversed in the spinal cord, where the gray matter is located within and the white matter is on the outside. Axons, the lengthy stems connecting neurons together and covered with myelin, make up the majority of white matter, while neuron somas, the round core cell bodies, make up the majority of gray matter, a protective coating. The two appear as separate shades on some scans because of the differences in the composition of the neuron components. How is the brain organized? The brain communicates with the rest of the body via electrical and chemical impulses. Your brain interprets each signal, which controls a distinct process. For instance, some make you feel worn out while others make you uncomfortable. Some messages are stored in the brain, while others are transmitted to distant extremities by way of the spine and the extensive network of nerves in the body. The central nervous system uses billions of neurons to accomplish this, nerve cells. The brain's major components and their functions. The cerebrum, brainstem, and cerebellum can be thought of as the three main parts of the brain. Cerebrum. Gray matter, the cerebral cortex, and white matter make up the cerebrum, the front of the brain. The cerebrum, which is the biggest component of the brain, controls temperature as well as initiating and coordinating movement. Speech, judgment, thinking and reasoning, problem solving, emotions, and learning are all made possible by different regions of the cerebrum. Other functions deal with the senses of sight, sound, touch, and others. The brain's cortex. The term cortex, which is Latin for bark, refers to the cerebrum's outer layer of gray matter. Due to its folds, the cortex has a huge surface area and makes up nearly half of the weight of the brain. There are two hemispheres, or halves, of the cerebral cortex. It has folds and ridges, gyri, all over it, sulci. The interhemispheric fissure, also known as the medial longitudinal fissure, connects the two hemispheres of the brain and extends from the front to the rear of the skull. The left half of the brain controls the right side of the body, and the right half the left. The corpus callosum, a sizable, C-shaped mass of white matter and nerve connections, serves as the communication link between the two hemispheres. The cerebrum's corpus callosum is located in the middle. Brainstem. The cerebrum and spinal cord are linked by the brainstem, which is in the center of the brain. The midbrain, pons, and medulla are all parts of the brainstem. Midbrain. With a variety of distinct neuron clusters, nuclei and colliculi, neuronal pathways, and other structures, the midbrain, or mesencephalon, is a tremendously complicated structure. These traits make it easier to do a variety of tasks, including listening, moving, responding to environmental changes, and calculating responses. The substantia nigra, a region of the basal ganglia that facilitates movement and coordination and is damaged by Parkinson's disease, is also located in the midbrain. Pons. 4 of the 12 cranial nerves, which enable a variety of functions like tear generation, chewing, blinking, concentrating eyesight, balance, hearing, and facial expression, originate in the pons. The pons, which means bridge in Latin, serves as the link between the midbrain and the medulla. Medulla. The medulla is where the brain and spinal cord meet at the base of the brainstem. A medulla is necessary for living. Numerous biological processes, including heart rhythm, respiration, blood flow, oxygen and carbon dioxide levels, are regulated by the medulla's functions. Reflex actions like sneezing, vomiting, coughing, and swallowing are produced by the medulla. The spinal cord passes through a sizable aperture at the base of the skull from the medulla's bottom. The spinal cord, which is supported by the vertebrae, transmits and receives signals between the brain and the rest of the body. Cerebellum. The cerebellum, sometimes known as the little brain, is a fist-sized section of the brain situated in the rear of the head, above the brainstem and below the temporal and occipital lobes. It features two hemispheres, just like the cerebral cortex. The inner region connects with the cerebral cortex, while the outside region contains neurons. Its job is to keep posture, balance, and equilibrium while coordinating voluntary muscle movements. The cerebellum's functions in intellect, emotion, and social interaction, as well as its potential roles in addiction, autism, and schizophrenia, are the subject of recent studies. Brain lobes and what they control. The frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipital lobes are the four portions that make up each cerebral hemisphere, part of the cerebrum. Specific functions are controlled by each lobe. Anterior lobe. The frontal lobe, the biggest part of the brain, controls personality traits, judgment, and movement. It is situated at the front of the head. A portion of the frontal lobe is often involved in smell recognition. The Broca's region, which is connected to speaking capacity, is located in the frontal lobe. Pituitary lobe. The parietal lobe, located in the center of the brain, aids with object identification and the comprehension of spatial connections, which include comparing one's body to the surroundings. The interpretation of touch and pain experienced by the body also involves the parietal lobe. Wernicke's region, which aids the brain in comprehending spoken language, is located in the parietal lobe. The occipital lobe. The rear portion of the brain that controls vision is called the occipital lobe. Frontal lobe. The temporal lobes on the sides of the brain have a role in short-term memory, speech, musical rhythm, and to some extent, scent perception.